So we're in Philadelphia, Mark. It seems like it's a completely different world.
Doesn't it? It's a funny WrestleMania, this, because it takes place at a time when the WWE were really pulling away from their nearest competition, WCW.
Yeah.
This is 1999, and really, 99 and 2000 are the years that kill WCW.
Right.
They're just running it into the ground. The money's out of control. The storylines are terrible. The inmates are running the asylum. Whereas WWF is hitting the Attitude Era. And this is the midpoint, coming towards the end of the key bit of the Attitude Era, which is why it's so sort of surprising that this is quite a bad WrestleMania.
There's a lot thrown in there. There are so many different kinds of matches, a lot of glitz, a lot of glamour, a lot of tits.
The crowd love everything that happens, you know, but when you look back on it, you go, right, well, the matches aren't actually very good. No one really has a lot of time. There are loads of these storylines everywhere that are just so confusing. Like a year's worth of storylines building up to something that lasts 3 minutes, and then they do a storyline off the back of it.
And you've kind of got to be across it and like, right, do you remember why we're feuding? Do you remember why we're beefing? Do you remember why The Undertaker's outside Vince McMahon's house?
Yes.
Do you remember that why? No, I don't.
Just keep dialing. Just keep... no answer! What do you want me to do? I'm sorry, but there's no answer!
But nobody's home yet.
They should be home any minute. I don't know what to do.
This is the era that I think one of the first things we ever saw that made you really go, this is hilarious.
Right.
This is the era of the Big Show burying his father and the Big Boss Man hijacking the coffin on the back of a 2x4 and driving through a cemetery while the Big Show is trying to hug his dead dad's coffin.
So this...
It is a funny WrestleMania. I thought I'd really enjoy this one. I thought we were going to be like, this is where it's off the hook.
Yeah.
And people will be listening to this and they'll be going, no, I remember this WrestleMania. It's really good. I thought I remembered this WrestleMania as well. Yeah. It's really, really... Considering the talent that's there, I think pretty much all of the pay-per-views around this have got much better matches.
Yeah.
And this one somehow just fizzles. I'll tell you what, the other thing that I've really noticed about this one, this is a WrestleMania that has Michael Cole, the ring announcer, in.
Yes.
And it's because Jim Ross has been having bouts of Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy is a sort of form of facial paralysis.
Yes, yeah.
And the problem... I say the problem. I mean, this is sort of a disgraceful thing. And again, if this wasn't wrestling, it would be handled very differently.
Yeah.
Jim Ross is regarded as being the greatest wrestling announcer. I think you could make the case of all time.
Yeah.
He gets a bit parodied for some of the repetitions he did. You know, my God, Austin, you know, done it, all this sort of stuff. But he's very, very good at getting a match over. Mick Foley always said when he was working out his matches, he imagined Jim Ross commentating them because he was going, what would Jim do in that situation?
Yeah.
And if that sounds good, then that will really help the match. So he's very, very good, but he had Bell's palsy.
Right.
And it affected the muscles in his face. They droop. And what they kept doing with him was they would fire him. And so...
every time he had a dose?
I believe that Vince McMahon said that television, of course, is a very visual medium. Wrestling is a visual spectacle. And what you don't want is a guy who's in his 50s with a drooping face, because that is not sexy and that is not cool.
But you see him, like, for 5 seconds.
Exactly.
Like, I can't remember...
They could have kept him behind the desk and nobody would have
Michael
noticed.
Cole is dressed like an oil prospector.
I know.
He's dressed like someone out of, like, There Will Be Blood.
The bizarre thing as well is that you go, what we need is someone hot and sexy, and you look at Michael Cole and you go, yeah, this fine piece of ass. Oh, sweet mama.
Put a fucking shirt on, Lawler. When you sweat into a shirt, like, it gets in the shirt, but it doesn't necessarily touch the lining of your jacket. Yeah. But with him, all of his sweat just going into his fucking lining of his jacket. And it's disgusting.
Maybe he's seen a member of law enforcement somewhere in the building. Absolutely schwitzing. Can't believe it. Michael Cole, the other thing that he do with that is Vince McMahon begins to take more of controlling hand in commentary. Right. So he begins feeding lines. And Michael Cole, certainly in the early days, is having to parrot everything that Vince is doing. And Vince doesn't like the action being explained. So you're watching it. He doesn't want someone going, hammerlock, into a headlock, rolls him over, front chancery.
That's quite old school, isn't it, at this point?
What he wants is them saying, The Undertaker, the Phenom, and telling you the storylines.
Yeah.
And so what you get in this is, it's like cramming for exams.
You've got one commentator doing that, and then you've got one commentator going, oh, look at them tits.
Oh, exactly.
It's just...
Exactly. Michael
obscene.
Cole is reading a history of wrestling as it happens, while Jerry Lawler is going, bloody fuck that!
That's all he's doing. Woo! Look at that little bum. Look at little bum cheeks coming out of her shorts.
I'd like to cut her arms off because she's so sexy. Woo! Stick them arms up my butt. I mean, it's just, it's perplexing. And of course, Lawler really is at his worst.
Lawler, who died today. It all kicks off with 4-time Grammy Award winners.
Boys to Men.
Boys to Men.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 years after End of the Road, I will have to say. I know they're Philadelphia's own, but I don't think the city of brotherly love extends so far as to accept Boys to Men 8 years after their heyday singing the national anthem. It seems...
The best thing about Boys to Men is that 3 of them turn up wearing that sort of like shiny PVC leatherette.
One of them is dressed like Carlton from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
He is. He's got a really comfy looking grey top and really bright blue jeans. And he sort of has a slight look as well of like one of those mentoring programs where you've got
on,
3
kids.
Young lads who are a bit sort of like...
From the street.
They're from the street.
Yeah.
And you go sort of like, well, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take them out for the weekend to Kew Gardens. And he sticks out like a sore thumb. But they do a really sort of muted version of the anthem that's really sort of nice in their harmony singing. And then they set off fireworks in the ring that are just a bit, oh no, that came to a nice end. You don't need to go... But yeah, they were good. They were good. It's also at this point that you first see the sign that says Big Red Retard.
Oh, good. I don't think I saw that once, to be honest.
It comes up a lot in the cane match,
a lot of signs. We go back to that montage where they're trying to sort of explain to people who might like wrestling back in the day. Don't worry, these old men still respect what's happening here.
Classy
even though
Freddie
that
Blassie
woman's
is
tit
here.
just fell out. Yeah, it's just like, don't worry about it.
They choose Classy Freddie Blassie, who was a very beloved character in his day. I mean, he was a brutal, violent man. One of his nicknames was the Vampire, Fred Blassie, and he was just a sort of gnawer at people's heads. But he comes out and he does this really ponderous time. No beginning, no end. An infinite procession towards mortality. Can we just see some wrestling? We don't need to. But he does say at one point, he says, like the mythic gods of ancient Greece, this is the showcase of the immortals. If anything, wrestling is the showcase of people who die too young.
Of the frequently mortal. Mortal in the northeastern term, drunk mortal, and also being incredibly mortal in that they die in car crashes.
Shall we do the first match if we've got time?
Let's do the first match before we chip off.
Yeah, great. This is the Hardcore Championship between Badass Billy Gunn, Bob Hardcore Holly, and Al Snow with Head. This is a hardcore match. Hardcore matches were very, very big at this period. They've introduced the hardcore title a few months before, and it's all about that sort of ECW style. It's, your hockey sticks and your cookie sheets and things.
It just seems like making a big mess at the start of
it does,
match.
yeah. But these were hugely over. I mean, they probably had peaked within about 3 or 4 years, at which point they were there was no reaction to them, really. Right. And they were very much for people in the mid-card. Billy Gunn was not very keen on this style. He'd spoken in interviews that he didn't really enjoy having to do all this. He said he was a fish out of water. He comes in wearing a T-shirt that just says, check out my ass.
Yeah, check out my ass.
But it's a strange... I still don't know... I mean, that T-shirt, you wear them because you want people to buy them, and then you're selling it to someone who's got a thing on it that says, check out my ass, and if you mean it seriously, that's wrong. If you don't, you look stupid. It's bad gimmick, Pete. Bad gimmick is what I'm saying. I think
it's for gigantic fat men. Because that would be... It's like, I'm not fat, it's a solar power for a sex machine. So, a bald man. I don't know. But it's that kind of joggy T-shirt. Haha, aren't I sexy?
Yeah, although when Billy Gunn is wearing it, he is sort of sexy, but the men...
He's got a good ass.
It's just blokes watching as well, so it's like, what message do you want, Billy? Are you telling the heterosexual men to check out your ass? Is that or are you saying, if you're a homosexual man, please do, I'm inclusive.
Call me.
All of this is confusing.
It's very confusing, Billy
It should
Gunn.
just say, please do not look at my ass.
Badass Billy Gunn over the steel stairs. Man.
Oh my lord, this is the era where they do one of the greatest T-shirts of all time. I think it might come in the year sort of after this.
Right.
But they released an APA T-shirt, Acolytes Protection Agency.
Yeah.
And for some reason they did a T-shirt where they thought, what else could it stand for that is hard and aggressive?
Right.
And they printed it with a logo and it said, the APA, always pounding ass.
Again, guys,
it's a classic T-shirt.
You've done a Billy Gunn,
and there is this alternative reading of wrestling, which is all about a load of men just walking around going, "I'm going to pound your ass." You ain't going to pound my ass. Maybe I'll pound yours. Tom
of Finland cartoon.
Again, I mean that is a T-shirt that we need to track down.
Always pounding ass.
Always pounding ass.
Wow. So it ends up with Hardcore Holly winning the Hardcore Championship. If he didn't, Hardcore Holly's not as hardcore as you'd expect, really. Should have.
Bob Holly worked as he'd been in a character called Sparky Plug, Thurman Sparky Plug, in the sort of Dayglow 90s era, where he was a NASCAR driver. Okay. And he'd reinvented himself, really. And his reinvention was to go, not one of these fucking gimmicks. And so he turns up here in black trunks, and he's most famous for his run as Hardcore Holly. And he was, by all counts, he's a tough guy. He's a solid thumper, and he's a bit of a bully. Yeah. Because he managed to last for quite a long time. So he goes through really till the mid-2000s.
And then Bob Holly gets in the ring.
Oh! It's on!
And the first thing Bob does is kick Matt in the ribs.
Oh!
And then Bob hits Matt like 3 times, like as hard as he can in the neck.
I see Bob's boot just go straight into Matt's jaw, and you can just see blood coming from his mouth. And the next boot goes right into Matt's eye. And he was confused, and I was confused too.
What is this?
It was like serious. It was brutal.
What we say?